Okay. Good morning, folks. Again, this is for MSE 403 10003 Advanced AI for Material Science. Today, we're actually being joined by Dr. Anjuli Savali, who is currently a policy analyst at Natural Resources Canada and one of my colleagues in my second job. She previously did a PhD here at the University of Toronto under Professor Bender, and then made a transition from doing sort of the hard technical work to really focusing on how does one build networks, especially internationally in a nascent field. And so what Anjuli's been doing over the past 5 years is working in this space of self-driving labs, developing a worldwide view of who are the active projects, who are the active groups in there, developing connections between those groups and folks at Natural Resources Canada, National Research Council, and the University of Toronto, and trying to position Canada as place it in a position of leadership inside of this space, sharing and disseminating best practices and learning from what others have done. And so this talk is going to focus very much on how does one build these types of networks? And Julie, the floor is yours, metaphorically speaking.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jay. Yes, yeah, that's exactly what I'll be talking about. And I'll also try to cover a little broadly um, the government of Canada and the government's role in general in supporting the building of networks, and why that's so important and why we value that. So, yes. Okay. So Jay already gave a pretty great introduction, but just quickly, I've been working in the field of clean energy technology for about 10 years now. And as Jay mentioned, I made the transition into policy away from benchtop or lab research. But I would also add in my deepest self, I'm a yoga and meditation enthusiast and passionate about personal health and well-being at all levels. So if that's also something you ever want to talk about, I'm more than happy to chat about that as well. So just going forward into the role of government. So this just takes a step back a little bit about, I know that as a student, I don't think I really understood kind of what governments, what the role that they played in this and how important it was. We don't usually have, that public policy or science policy background coming into this, so I thought we would start here. But what is the government's role? So, in fostering science and technology and innovation research, and basically, this is quite relevant to the course you're in right now, right? So, in the adoption of AI for supporting the development of new materials in Canadian society, but also worldwide for the improvement and betterment of our lives overall. So, the government has a role to develop the policies in which that create that environment in which science, technology, and innovation can thrive. It also delivers programs that funds research and development and innovation activities. And in government, we also conduct our own science and technology or related activities that meet our own needs. So, how does this work? So, basically, if we look at the policy cycle that's shown here on the slide on the left, the government sets its overall priorities or mandate. And that's number one here. And so that might actually be related to the overall digital transformation or adoption of digital tools in society overall. And of course, that includes adoption of AI. And so from there to number two, policy formulation. Relevant policies are proposed. So how are they going to, set that idea or mandate into action here? And then it goes through some sort of decision-making process. And so if these policies are approved or not, then it kind of gets forward into implementation. And then, so to implement these policies, governments have a number of tools at their disposal, whether they be financial tools. So that's kind of, as I mentioned, we can fund research directly, we can give grants or loans. There's other ways too, through taxation or other things. There's also regulation. So by hosting these regulatory bodies, being in charge of these sorts of things, or of course, service. So that's through providing information or education. And that's what I'll probably focus a little bit more on how Natural Resources Canada uses these tools, in particular information and education, as a way to promote the uptake of self-driving labs or accelerated materials discovery in Canada and internationally overall. But why is this important? Why should we care about this? And why the government is investing in science, whether it be financially or indirectly through service and knowledge-based tools? Well, if we consider this kind of chain here that starts at the base with science and providing funding and support for basic science, this can get translated into technology through outputs. And of course, technology outputs can lead to innovation. So as we adapt the way that we do things, these can be more efficient. In the way that things are produced, leading to an increase in our productivity. And then in theory, productivity increase can be linked to competitiveness of our nation. And in theory, competitiveness is linked to our standard of living, and raising our standard of living is linked to quality of life. So this is a very basic traditional economic explanation that's given for why we do this kind of research and why we invest in this, beyond, researching cool things or learning more about the natural world around us and trying to get things done. Um, Personally, I don't believe this is always the case, and there's a lot of controversy now, and we're looking more into is your competitiveness actually increasing a standard of living? And so there's a lot of issues around that as well. But I won't go into that for this presentation. We could also talk at length about that, but we'll stay with this traditional explanation for now. And so this is why you can understand that the Canadian government might be interested in supporting this. So now I'll shift gears to talk a little bit about mine and Jay's department, Natural Resources Canada. So here you might appreciate that our major sectors in Canada are energy, mining, oil and gas, and forestry, and this being a large part of our economy in Canada. Um, and our mandate here is shown on the screen. NRCan works to improve the quality of life of Canadians by ensuring that our natural resources are developed sustainably, providing a source of jobs, prosperity, and opportunity, while preserving our environment and respecting our communities and Indigenous peoples. So, this is what is at the back of our minds as government employees, as government workers, public servants, as we do any work here. So, all that work goes towards meeting this mandate. And so, at Natural Resources Canada, science is central to our operations. Um, we play a unique role, not only as a performer of S&T research, but also a user, a funder, and communicator. And so this is not only across, working with clean energy, but across all the sectors that I mentioned before. And NRCan plays a vital and unique role in supporting innovation throughout Canada's industries, forestry, mining, energy. So the government, Natural Resources Canada, does have extensive responsibilities, including mapping, public safety, program delivery, and policy development in these fields as well. Our NRCan researchers help to generate and transfer new knowledge, technologies, and tools. For example, this includes our work in and around accelerated materials discovery to drive innovation, promote sustainability, and enhance productivity overall. So, to that end, back in 2017, NRCan recognized and prioritized this accelerated materials discovery approach. And as you're very familiar, that includes, involving mechatronics, high performance computing, modeling, data management, AI through self-driving labs or maps to accelerate the development of new materials for clean energy technologies, specifically because that's what we care about in our mandate. So NRCan recognized this and began putting funding behind this, putting our efforts and energy, putting people to work on this since that time. So I'll talk a little bit about the research facility out of which we deliver this, CanMet Materials, where I believe some of you will be visiting on March 18th, so you'll get to see in person. But in general, Natural Resources Canada has multiple labs across Canada. However, our materials focused facility is situated in Hamilton, Ontario. And we have about 120 staff, scientists, technologists, support staff. The facility size itself is 165,000 square feet, which is pretty large, um, which you'll see. And about 95% of our projects are collaborative, working with either academia, industry, or partners in that sense. So you get a sense of the kind of work that we're doing. In the work that we do, of course, being government, we focus on materials performance, so the safety, reliability, energy efficiency, enabling clean energy activities, such as biomass conversion, waste heat recovery, as well as de-risking the adoption for stakeholders, looking at cost, production capacities, and R&D investment. And lastly, closing the cradle to cradle loop, so enabling the recovery of materials from waste streams and end-of-life products. These are the different programs that we look at, shown on the screen here. So you can see from materials for energy end use, transportation, production, and then more recently, emerging and critical materials. And then we also have a regulation body associated with us as well, the non-destructive testing certification body. Overall, the facility has basically a unique pilot scale, start to finish materials processing approach. And some of the things that we do are shown on the screen here. Um, some of our emerging priorities as well. So the things that we actually focus on and have identified as important are shown here across the different programs. But what I want to focus in on is the emerging and critical materials. So you can see we have listed as the number, the first bullet there, magnetic materials and magnets. So for example, you could consider that we take our approach to accelerated materials discovery or self-driving labs, and we apply our priority areas to that. So we want to look at developing these and are going to set our SDLs to focus on problems associated with the production of those materials specifically. So now focusing a little bit more on our accelerated materials discovery program and the work that we're doing here and deploying this to support those priorities that I showed on the previous slide. Um, so to do this, we do this across three different pillars. The first one being infrastructure and how the government, Natural Resources Canada, CanMet Materials has supported infrastructure in this space for this program, as well as research excellence and the research that's being done in this area. And then, of course, the focus, the network building and partnerships that we have been doing in this space to support this. So infrastructure is yeah, as I mentioned, I'll talk about that first and what that looks like. So along with the National Research Council of Canada, so this is a separate government department, the NRC is what we call it, and we are NRCan, so a little confusing, but um, so we are co-delivering a center of excellence called MADE, or the Materials Acceleration Demonstration Ecosystem. And here we're actively working together to build on the strengths of both teams at both government departments for a unified approach towards accelerated materials discovery research programming. And specifically, we have two facilities that are dedicated to this. So this is about our center of excellence. First of all, one is located in Mississauga, this 6,000, just over 6,000 meter squared facility with a dedicated MAPS lab space. And this was both of these facilities in Mississauga and Hamilton were funded by an initiative to modernize federal science labs across Canada. So not only did we get funding for this infrastructure in both locations, but there were also other areas across Canada, other labs that were funded in different subject matter areas, health and other things like that. So this investment gave us this space for dedicated accelerated materials discovery research, not only for ourselves, for government researchers, but also to partner with academia and industry and other visiting researchers to take advantage of this brand new space to conduct cutting edge research. So again, the facility in Mississauga also houses a mechatronics lab, an AI studio, and then houses 10 NRCan employees alongside the NRC employees there as well. And then out in Hamilton, Ontario, we have a lab that was fit up into that space there. and is mostly dedicated to mechatronics development and map space. So you'll see this when you come to the Hamilton lab as well. So the next pillar that NRCan supports is research excellence. And this has taken the shape of conducting our own in-house engineering and research work and tool development to support accelerated materials discovery at CanMet Materials and in the broader community, with a great focus on mechatronics and AI and data. So, since the program launched in 2018, the mechatronics team has engineered around 5 automated platforms, and currently some are still under development. But these are focused on high throughput casting, um, thermal treatment, electrochemical testing or corrosion or electroplating, as well as coating, a catalyst coating system, and then lastly, most recently, battery digestion. So these projects have really, oh, and actually the platform at the right of this slide here shown is our thermal electric generator map, which is aimed at new materials for zero emission vehicles. So lightweighting for these applications. But really, these projects have helped our team, our mechatronics team, hone their skills in this space, developing their skills to gear up for some upcoming projects and really train out a team at this stage. In terms of AI, so we have delivered or in the process of delivering development of an AI to predict battery degradation and failure mechanisms to improve the cost, performance, and competitiveness of the zero emission vehicles, as well as an AI to optimize processing conditions for lithium extraction from waste brine to improve the overall efficiency for recycling. So you can see how those might be tied directly to our NRCan mandate. And the data team has focused on the development of tools such as an in-house data orchestrator, and executor software, as well as API controls, cloud infrastructure development as well, and all this stuff to support the data management. But going forward, our focus now is really on leveraging this solid foundation that's been established to deliver relevant scientific results for accelerated research, as well as focusing more on AI algorithm integration into our research. Yes, this is Jay's yeah, that's Jay's baby. That's Jay's area. Okay. So now our third area and our final pillar, and what I'll focus on for the remainder of this presentation is around our interest in network building and partnership support. But first, before I get into that, just some rationale on this. Why is it important to us that the government builds these research networks and partnerships, both nationally and internationally? Well, I guess in theory, we probably all understand in concept why we should work with one another, why that's important. But from the government's perspective, working together uh, provides stronger international cooperation on overall global challenges. So you can imagine great challenges like climate change is not just something that affects one nation, it affects everyone. So everyone, we all need to work together on this, and it's important to support one another in this. International networks also support innovation, competitiveness, and talent training and mobility. So you can imagine as we develop relationships with one another, you feel more comfortable. There's more of a trust in between not only the people, but also nations. And this can allow for talent training, exchanges, mobility, such that the pool grows and everyone supports one another in that. And of course, this also reduces duplication of efforts. If one country is funding and working strongly in one area, rather than completely duplicating that in a different country and not sharing that, we can, through trust and relationship building, share that information through knowledge dissemination. And that's kind of the focus of my job as a policy analyst is really to support that knowledge dissemination. So things like workshops, conferences, summer schools, research and student exchanges, putting out publications, putting out reports to advise policymakers, to advise industry, to advise that sort of thing. So that's really why it's important that we do these things. And for the rest of the talk, I'll give a couple case studies on what NRCan has done in this space towards driving towards this knowledge dissemination activities. So the very first initiative that we got involved in was Mission Innovation. So this was actually the very first kind of, I guess, movement in this space here on adopting accelerated materials discovery. And this was back in 2017. NRCan became involved to work with Alanas Guzik and his team to launch Innovation Challenge 6, or Clean Energy Materials. So what is all of this? So Mission Innovation, you probably have not heard about it, but I would be surprised if you have, but maybe you have. It's a political level initiative that was launched at COP26 back in, I think, 2015 or so to encourage government spending and investment in clean energy initiatives worldwide. And so there were 8 innovation challenges initially to start, and one of them was aimed at accelerated materials discovery and maps overall, and this was Innovation Challenge 6. So, in the launch of this initiative, a workshop was held in 2017 in Mexico City, where this concept of maps was launched, as well as this community idea overall to promote and deploy these materials acceleration platforms globally, as well as to encourage other governments to invest in this space, to provide funding for their people, for their researchers to then look into the adoption of this. And here's a picture from the workshop itself. See if you can find Jay in here. He's hidden, but maybe you can see him. He was there as well. Okay. We're going to move on. Okay. So the goal of this challenge, as I mentioned, kind of evolved. It's around the same thing as when we first started back in 2017 and 18, and I came on board a little bit later to support that. But the goals remain the same: to raise awareness, to share knowledge and expertise, and better align the international community in this space. And again, NRCan's involvement really was to support the engagement of government, high-level political engagement, and drive action at higher levels to support this overall as priority and mandate. NRCan became a co-lead for this initiative and helped deliver a number of accomplishments that contributed to supporting the base of this ecosystem within Canada, as well as internationally, from which other research, other initiatives could grow. So the very first investment in the maps space was a total of 10.8 million Canadian dollars that went to the University of British Columbia for the development of Project Ada. And so that was within Canada from NRCan as well. Also, other kind of accomplishments include the involvement of 7 member countries, and 5 of which have signed on to an MOU agreeing to share information in this space and working towards that. Holding of a number of different initiatives and launching initiatives, including the 6 million euro German-Canadian Materials Acceleration Center program, which is our second case study, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. But this also included a $6 million US IC Maps program in India and other linked initiatives that were funded in the EU, such as the Storage, Research, Infrastructure Ecosystem Program, as well as the Rise Energy program as well. And also including the development of reports such as a how-to guide, so you want to deploy a self-driving lab, and contributions to the AMI 2030 policy initiative, and other guiding documents as well. So one of the events that was held was the M4E Symposium back in 2023. We actually went to U of T for this, but this was a great kind of showcase event on how we brought together people from 9 different members from Finland, India, and Norway, and engaged the community here, providing deep dive sessions, promoting active knowledge exchange, supporting networking activities, and allowing for exploring of Maps Lab. So this is really to our key work that we do to support this overall. And ideally, so what the goal here is by forming these relationships and partnerships, you then have a solid basis to move forward for future projects, proposals, working together, and that. So now moving on to our next case study here, the German-Canadian Materials Acceleration Center. So this is a 5-year bilateral collaborative project that was launched back in 2021. It's co-led by Forschungszentrum Jülich, which is in Germany, and Natural Resources Canada, and Chem Materials, that's us, and with support from the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology in Karlsruhe and the National Research Council of Canada. So this is a really great example between two countries aimed at strengthening our German-Canadian relationships in science and technology, but specifically accelerated materials discovery. And over the last 5 years, we've had a number of different outcomes shown here on the slide related to research outcomes, but also in training and supporting that as well. Our program is coming to an end this year in 2026. We have a closing conference happening in March, but we're looking forward to that and kind of celebrating this and taking this forward into ideally something where we can continue building on this relationship as well. But from a high level, the purpose of GCMAC was to harness our German-Canadian R&D knowledge and infrastructure to accelerate the energy materials pipeline from idea to innovation, taking things up that value chain. Our objectives being to support the growth of self-driving labs or materials acceleration platforms, to enable the development of energy materials across 5 work packages and materials challenges, to conduct impactful material science to push key technologies from discovery to scale up. And lastly, of course, to train the next generation of MAP researchers for energy materials. And you'll see all the events that we've done towards that as well. Our shared R&D capabilities and infrastructures are shown here between Germany and Canada. This includes the facilities that I've already talked about in Hamilton and Mississauga, but it also includes out at UBC and NRC Vancouver. So there's a government lab out there as well that we leverage towards this, and in Germany as well, and kind of the areas of focus that we leverage. Our work packages and the way that this project was broken down is shown here. The main focus was on hydrogen production and using fuel cells for this. So a lot of the materials challenges that you can see here are along the top row here, challenge 1 through 5, are aimed at that. And our NRCan, Natural Resources Canada, specifically CanMet Materials, does not do hydrogen research for hydrogen production and fuel cells. However, we did contribute more on the methods development, on the device construction, and leveraging overall knowledge and know-how into the partnership for this. And that was through Work Package 2. You can see that as well. So each of these work packages were hosted by a Canadian partner and a German partner. And so then they would work together to advance to meet the milestones that had been set out in the research for these different areas as well. So the events that we had related to training, and this was involving a lot of students. So our first one was back in 2022. This was our intensive training and knowledge exchange, which is basically, it was a summer school. You can see everyone's masks. We were coming out of COVID there. But this hosted quite a number of participants across 3 different locations. So this was pretty elaborate. We were in Vancouver, we were in Hamilton, and we were in Toronto. But this really supported with a fulsome picture and training for the students and researchers that attended this event and gave quite a broad overview of the MAPS landscape. Again, I want to emphasize that these are the events that bring people together, that connect people with one another, that help build trust, help people feel comfortable, such that going forward, someone might say, oh, hey, I remember someone gave a talk on this. What are they still working on? Can I do that in my research? That's something I want to look at now. Or, oh, I see this person at a conference, another conference, and you have that trust and relationship to take that forward to the next level, and whatever it is that you might be wanting to do. The other summer school that we had was in 2023, and we've had also a couple other events since then, but I'll just focus on this summer school held in Germany in 2023. Again, this had a lot of the same outputs that our previous summer school did, but had a stronger focus on tutorial sessions and knowledge training in that sense in these more traditional lesson style. But we also did have lab tours and the opportunity for engagement and interaction as well. So these overall were kind of our key activities. We've had lots of other things, but I'll just focus on these two for now. Um, and then I'll also shift to our kind of industrial arm through GCMAC is what we call NRMAC, the NRMAC network, which is kind of a sub-network as part of this network. But the purpose of this was really to bring together end users of the technologies and materials that we were working on into a single network. So our friends over at Jura AG helped us to form this network and connect us with industrial partners to help better inform the research that was being done to connect it with industry as well. So that was kind of the purpose of having this as part of it. Okay. So that was kind of our two major areas. I'll shift now to more broadly our partnerships and just how the government works with other partners. And one of our strong partners, of course, is Acceleration Consortium, as you probably are familiar with being located at U of T. But back in 2023, U of T was awarded $200 million from the Canadian government. So this was not Natural Resources Canada, but a different government department. But this was to support AC in securing the people, the space, the partnerships to accelerate the discovery of materials and molecules needed for a sustainable future. So doing very similar work, similar research. The importance of us both working together here is to not duplicate efforts, to expand both our networks, to support the reach. Of course, academia having slightly different focus than what a government lab might focus on here, but of course, both of us are working together towards the same overall goal of advancing this in this area. NRCan is an official partner of the AC and supports AC knowledge sharing activities and events and conducting research with AC researchers as well. So beyond our primary partnership with AC, as well as the National Research Council, we've connected with many other collaborators in various ways. So going from simply ideas sharing and knowledge sharing to co-hosting workshops together and other events on accelerated materials discovery, to training exchanges, to conducting research together, ultimately with the goal of supporting everyone in their objectives and what they're seeking to accomplish based on their different areas, all in the idea of promoting the uptake of self-driving labs or accelerated materials discovery. So just overall returning to kind of those three pillars at NRCan, and how we are supporting this uptake across infrastructure that we have invested in through research excellence and research programming, and generating research outcomes themselves, and of course, network building. So these three pillars are all contributing to kind of these outcomes shown here on the slide. So delivering unique world-class research in these state-of-the-art facilities, in convening the local and international communities through these unique offerings, in raising awareness and promoting adoption of these new innovative approaches to educate and inform at all levels, going from researchers all the way to senior management and policy and industry as well. Working towards building internal capacity and supporting knowledge transfer, and then, of course, supporting and facilitating training in collaboration with partners. So all of this, I think, is the work that we do, um, and is the work that we're has led us to connecting with other researchers all over the world interested in this approach, right? So, in the accelerated materials discovery approach and working in this field. So we are looking forward to continuing this work and building connections, and advancing this field overall and seeing what the future has to offer. But overall, I think I want to emphasize to you that relationships and networks and research are extremely important, especially for advancing together and working together. And when you think about how much further you can get in providing support and working with others to encourage and to advance not only your tasks, but in supporting the overall community overall. And that brings everyone forward as we go forward. So I really want to encourage you to nurture your relationships and connections with others over prioritizing tasks or just getting the work done. So if that's just your one takeaway from today, that's perfect, that your relationships and networks are really important. And again, yeah, to wrap up, that addressing global challenges such as the impact of climate change requires a massive and sustained investment, not only in engineering, but also R&D, along with other things, of course, such as behavioral shifts, but that's not the focus of this talk. But of course, accelerated materials discovery will represent an exciting new opportunity that's here to transform the way that we do research, and plays a big role here. But it can only be done as we all work together, coordinate and leverage our resources, and foster strong partnerships with one another and working together as well. So I'll end with this quote: if you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together. And so this is an African proverb that I think kind of encapsulates everything that I want to share. So thank you so much. I'll stop there.